The food service, hospitality, and retail industries are evolving in ways you've never heard of until now. Hosted by global industry technovator Rob Grimes and powered by the IFBTA, TechBytes is your go-to podcast, putting technology innovation and trends on the menu.
This is another one of those, it's not March anymore, actually, it's April, but one of those March Madness things, a lot of conferences, and an old friend and somebody I've known actually for a while, and we'll get into that in a minute, but Sherif Mityas, who is with Brix Holdings as their CEO. So welcome to TechBytes.
Thanks for having me on.
So you have sort of an interesting career, because when we first met, I think you were in IT, right? Is that possible?
Yes, that's correct. I was, a lot of my career was kind of in the technology space. Joined the restaurant industry actually through TGI Fridays.
That's when we first met.
That's when we first met as their CIO. Then moved to being Chief Experience Officer. So took on technology and marketing and culinary. And then from there, I got to move up to the CEO role at Brix.
So you're sort of like a IT guy made good, right? I don't know how we say that, right?
I don't know.
But it's sort of like,
right.
They used to say, IT got no respect.
That's changing, because I think there's no business right now that will tell you they can't and shouldn't rely on technology to drive their business.
I have this feeling that's going to make for an interesting conversation here, because your perspective is one that started in IT, but in a CEO role, you're actually trying to direct all the areas of the business. So the first question would be, does the IT background, has that helped you in what you're doing? And then maybe the second part of that is maybe how do you think it changed your perspective?
Yeah, I definitely think it's helped in a couple of ways. I think as technologists, we come to problem solve. It's kind of our mindset. We kind of think about problems and how do we approach them? How do we structure them? How do we break them down? And I think whether you're trying to solve a technical problem or a strategy problem or a customer problem, the thought process, the construct that you should take is very similar. And I think having that background has helped. And then even further, as you think about just the massive technology change that's happened in our space, and you can say that was, we were so far behind and we've caught up. You can say COVID and the pandemic drove that change. Whatever drove it, I don't think there is a conversation that happens now in the C-suite or with the board that doesn't involve technology. And how are you going to create more efficiency, more automation, more customer touch, more benefits for your team members and your general managers? And how do you enable that? It always comes back to, well, what can technology provide?
Well, I think, though, that so first of all, you've pointed out this sort of the structured process and things, and I think that's a lot of times why the IT office ends up being the project manager's office.
100%.
Because IT people are good project managers, right?
That's right.
However, the thought strikes me, because you brought this up as sort of like where technology has shifted and how it's in different areas. You actually, so I don't know if you would know this, because this might be before your time at Fridays,
okay,
but I have a long history at Fridays. And in the industry, people used to view Fridays as the number one leader in technology, because they first went to the tablets and they had all the, I think at one time they had like 11 PCs and point of sale terminals in a single unit. And they were really tech forward. In those things. And yet you've worked in some spaces from Fridays and also some of the ones you're working in now, like Friendly. We didn't actually ask, what's within Brix Holdings, because It's not obvious, right? Which we should do. But some of the spaces that you're working in now have not always been viewed as tech forward.
Not at all. And you bring up Friendly's, which is a great point. I mean, it's a 90-year-old brand. I mean, you think about legacy brand, you think about doing things the old ways, pen and paper. It's been a complete transformation because it has to happen. It's not a nice to have anymore. We've redone the entire tech stack at Friendly's in the last 18 months. Everything from the POS to the back office to the mobile ordering, the web app, delivery platform, loyalty program, everything is new because it had to be done to bring the experience up to what today's consumers expect, regardless if you're a hot, new, emerging brand or whether you're a 90-year-old family casual sit-down restaurant.
But that also means, So the challenges that come within that segment, so we use Friendly's sort of as an example on that. There's a number of challenges. So it's a 90-year-old brand. And not only are you dealing with the technology, but you have to change the image of the brand itself, right?
Correct.
Because, the menus that are there, but the clientele is changing.
That's right.
And then you have the ownership, right? Because some of those people also have to buy into this as well. So it's like you've got different generational pieces and everything else you got to deal with.
It's true. I mean, you almost have to sell it 3 times, right? You got to sell it internally. Why this makes sense? Why should we be doing this? Why should we be investing in this? You got to sell it to your consumers, right? Why is this going to be better for you? Why is this going to improve the experience? You got to sell it to the franchisees. What does this mean for you? How is this going to put more money in your pocket?
Right. Is it an obvious sell to all 3?
It is not all the time, and that's part of the challenge.
So are you able to actually sort of share what that, where that challenge may have been? I mean, what's the learning here in that?
Yeah, I think the learning is always, first is kind of like the physician's thing, do no harm, right? So anytime we're thinking about implementing something, it's where's the incrementality of the benefit? And how can I make that very focused and connected to the audience I'm talking to? So what is the benefit to a franchisee, right? Franchisee, I want to make more money. I want to drive more traffic. I want to create more success in my 4 walls.
Right.
So I got to show that ROI. I got to show where the technology impacts what he or she is most concerned about. Versus a consumer, I have 80-year-old grandparents that come into Friendly's with their grandkids.
Gee, there's a challenge, right? Because the grandkids are bringing in their technology.
Exactly right.
And the 80-year-old grandparents
What?
hopefully are doing it. They're not on a flip phone, I hope. But actually you're dealing with 2 different sets that came in at the same time, and you got to engage with both.
That's exactly right. But if you think about grandparents, they brought the kids in, right? They've given the parents a break. Kids are running around having a great time, but oh my God, it's time to go. I need to pay my bill. Something as simple as, well, put the QR code on the table, let the grandparents snap the photo, pay the bill, and get out of there with the grandkids before they go crazy. Loved it. Grandparents paying on their phone, right? So bringing that kind of technology to a different generation to solve a problem within our restaurants.
Do you also have the same generational challenges with the employees themselves?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about what we used to have for training in our stores, right? Training used to be paper. Training used to be, or, some sort of video they had to go to the screen and watch. We had to completely change that, right? Because you've got to have a 30-second video that they can watch on their phone, flip through it, and understand what they need to do that day. So again, generationally, you have to have, and what's where the technology is beautiful, you create that opportunity to give something to someone to make their life easier, to make their job easier, to make their experience better. That's
and it helps you to recruit the next generation of employee too, because they actually have that expectation as you come in.
100%. And that's that connection that we're looking for, right? Especially as the turnover in the restaurant space. Anything you can do to make people's lives better, where they see the value that you're putting and the commitment that you're giving to them, that creates stickiness. They want to be with you.
Now, Friendly's isn't the only brand that you have.
It is not. We have 8 brands. So Friendly's is the largest, but we have Clean Juice, which is the only USDA certified organic juice bar in the country, 80 units there. We have 2 frozen yogurt concepts, Orange Leaf and Red Mango.
Right.
We have Smoothie Factory plus Kitchen. We have Humble Donuts.
I don't think I knew about the donuts.
And Pizza Jukebox.
That I do know about.
So yeah, we got lots of great brands out there, 325 units across 40 states.
So when you're doing that, now you're talking about different technologies. Are you able to find a technology stack and a suite that, where do they all integrate and come across together, and then where are they separate?
Yeah, so I think the core pieces of technology, so for instance, our communication platform with our franchisees, FranConnect, right? So that's something that we use across all the brands. Our POS system, Revel, across all the brands.
Right.
And we did that migration over the last 18 months. Our back office systems. Now, you need a more sophisticated back office for a Friendly's than you can imagine for a frozen yogurt shop. So For those that need a back office.
It depends how you define back office.
That's right. So is it just inventory? Is it labor scheduling? Is it all the pieces?
Does it have the financial stuff?
Exactly right. So we can use different modules of the same platform.
Right.
We can also use the same platform to do web, mobile ordering, same one to do loyalty, right? So there's a lot of commonalities we can use. And even then going to the marketing technology stack. How do we use AI and some of the personalization tools? Right. We can use those across the brand. So there's more actually that you can actually leverage than not as it relates to even a QSR brand to a casual family sit-down.
I think people don't necessarily always realize that. I find it interesting, though, that you were able to standardize on the POS across the board because a lot of times, well, of course, I did hear the word pizza somehow in there too, right? Yes. But we'll get into that. Maybe we'll cover that in the second half as we think about going forward technology, right? But when you think about being able to use a single point of sale, not all providers can do that, number one, and because there are different requirements in there.
Right.
But a lot of times you can standardize on the back office, and to allow the flexibility. But there's a lot of nuances, in all that.
There is, and so that was one of the requirements actually we looked at from a POS perspective is we wanted to have something that could have the handhelds at a Friendly's, could have the kiosk screen at a frozen yogurt shop, right? And be able to have different capabilities within the same platform, right? Because every morning I love to see all the POS data come up and roll up, and I can see how every store did in my chain, every comp, across all the brands, one system.
Well, that certainly, makes a difference in there. The question, and maybe people don't debate it so much anymore, but they used to use that word mandate, right? And so franchisees always hated the word mandate in there. But I think in today's environment, it seems that franchise owners seem to understand, especially with the competitiveness out there, that they need to invest in technology. And therefore, maybe the word mandate isn't there. But to try to get everybody on one system is, tough.
It was not easy. No, I kind of make it sound like it was this fun little journey over the last 18 months. It took some effort, no question, but we got them there.
But you got them there. So why don't we just take a minute and we'll just take a quick break.
Sure.
I would actually like to talk about going forward, but also we're sitting here in Scottsdale, so I'd like to just maybe talk about a couple things on that as well. So we'll just take a break and we'll get started again in a minute.
With the rapid expansion of technology in the food and beverage industries, finding the right supplier can become overwhelming and complicated. To simplify this process, the IFBTA created Exchange. Exchange is a powerful search tool where users can easily narrow down their technology search and refine results by application type, geography served, department, and more. Browse resources and learn more about the industry's technology suppliers at exchange.ifbta.org. Now, back to the show.
So we're back, and my conversation guest today, because it is a conversation that we've had before at other places, but we're doing it now on TechBytes, with Sherif Mityas, and he's the CEO of Brix Holdings, and we've discovered 9 brands?
8 brands.
8 brands. 8 brands across everything from the QSR, the fast casual, to the full service, and 90-year-old brands in there mixed in between. And we've talked about the tech stack, and we've talked about the thinking that's in there. But in the last 2 years, you've gotten some press and some other things, and you mentioned Pizza Jukebox. Mm-hmm. And do you want to just sort of give a quick description of that one?
Sure. So Pizza Jukebox was our foray into a fully automated restaurant. So there is basically a pizza robot that takes the dough, puts the toppings that a customer chooses from the kiosk screen, so they can sausage or pepperoni or both or something, it's vegetables, and goes into the pizza oven. It all comes out. The only time a human touches it is when they cut it in the box and hand it to the guest. So, and that's what we want. We want our labor, our team members, to engage with the guests, to show them how the pizza robot works, because it's part of the experience, this little arm that flies around.
Was the first place that you put it in, was it in the Walmart?
It was a Walmart up in Frisco, Texas, yep. And so it's part show, it's part dinner theater. And so it was our first foray. We're trying it out. We have an opportunity to now obviously expand that brand and put it in a number of other locations. We have a number of folks interested in.
Do you see that as a partnering brand since it's sort of a self-contained?
It is, yes. We can co-brand it. In fact, in that location, we've co-branded it with our Red Mango. So we have frozen yogurt, one of our other brands. So you can get something to eat and a little dessert.
So I got to ask the question and put you on the spot on that, but is the frozen yogurt also being done robotically?
It is not.
Because I have seen that. I think
Yes. Yes.
Levi Stadium, I've seen it in a number of places,
There
right?
is.
So there's an opportunity there, right?
There is an opportunity there,
And you
yes.
could have pizza and yogurt together. You're
Yes.
probably not going to have frozen yogurt on a pizza, but
Not quite yet, no.
together, right?
Yeah.
You could do that.
Yes. But yeah, we're exploring. I mean, we're not shy, obviously, about trying different technologies.
But that kind of robotic technology also enables you to look to the future and do new and different locations, right? So you could do your partnership like you did in Walmart. It could be a convenience store. It could be anywhere, right? And bring the brand
right.
out. So do you see yourself as, or do you already have it, totally self-autonomous locations?
We see not totally autonomous. I think there's always that human element that we want to have in certain cases. Now, we are looking at vending, though, right? Some of these automated vending.
That's where we're headed here.
Yep,
So,
right?
okay.
And so we are looking at that. We've got a couple bids right now into airports to put in some of our brands in a totally autonomous setting. One of them would be our Clean Juice brand, where you can kind of go to the wall and get a different juice or a different smoothie.
Well, I was calling that
No
restaurant
humans.
in a box.
That's
Of
basically
sorts,
what it
right?
is. Right.
See, now that would be a good thing, by the way. You know, we talked about a couple of years ago because Middleby was doing the pizza jukebox.
That's right.
You know, to do something and showcase, you know, restaurant in a box at some place like the NRF or things like that, just because
That's right.
it gives people idea that you can go ahead and either pop up or you can put it or you can expand your operation.
Exactly. Yeah, it just opens up so much more real estate, to your point. Right?
Absolutely.
And so many
And
more
you can mix and
opportunities.
match.
And you can mix and match. You can co-brand. There's so many things to do.
That's probably the next generation. Somebody will come up with just totally not an autonomous store, but they'll come up with, you know, totally restaurant in a box and fresh food, and just everything will be, you know, sort of ended that way.
It definitely headed in that direction. Yeah. Especially in some of your, as you know, high labor states where people are looking for opportunities to kind of create more autonomous opportunities.
So it's interesting you just brought that up. So, okay. So a lot of times people have that conversation about labor, and they're talking about technology in a negative, it's a positive way, but a negative way to solve the labor problem. Now, I've not looked at it that way. I've looked at it as a way of revenue generation and being able to open up in non-traditional space.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And I think that's always been, as I mentioned, even the pizza jukebox, we didn't reduce labor.
Right. I think people think that you're going to do that.
And we didn't. No, we still had the same labor model because we want those folks to engage with consumers versus being in the back chopping pepperoni.
Right.
Right? And so it's much more important to improve that guest experience versus the tasks that you would normally have people do. It's not a reduction in labor. It's an improvement of the capability of the labor that you have.
So you've worked in a number of restaurants, you know, that have a lot of labor and service in the front of the house because you have servers, right?
Yes.
And what I've observed is sort of like this, I don't know what it was, you know, everybody wanted to do those front of the house robots. And it seems like as far as they ever got was just maybe the delivery. You know what it is? Fridays was the one who really invented the runner system.
Right.
So they basically use it as a runner system.
That's right.
Right. But they're not in Asia, they may interact with the guests, but they're not doing it here. But it seems like most of the technology advances are in the back of the house for standardization, for smaller spaces, for safety.
Yes.
You know, I just said, by the way, everything except labor.
Yes.
I said everything but labor, right?
That's right.
So where do you think things are going to go in the front of the house, and how long is it going to take? Because never's a long time, so I figure it's going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, you know, I actually don't think it's going to happen very quickly at all in the front of house. I think it's gimmicky right now, to your point. You know, the little robot that might run it to your table, but there's still this when people want to go out and not interact with people, they go through the drive-thru. They go to a QSR, a fast casual. When they go to a sit-down restaurant, there is an expectation, and I don't think that expectation is going to change, of human interaction. And so
That's the hospitality.
That's the hospitality.
Right.
Now, can I improve the front of house staff with technology? And some of the things we were testing the earpiece and the hostess.
Right.
Right? So when someone comes in, I know who you are based on your mobile phone. That's triggered something, tells the hostess, what's your favorite drink? It's your birthday. You're
Right.
greeted by name. Now think of that experience. Your Norm coming into Cheers. They know you by name.
Right.
Right? That's where I think technology is going to play.
And this is where you started in IT, and if I got that one right, you went to Chief Experience Officer.
That's
Was that what you
exactly
said?
it.
Right. Okay. So, that's where you're starting to combine the two to say that technology is not what you're putting in front of somebody, but it's sort of enhancing the experience.
That's exactly
And then working with. Okay. So we're here at the Restaurant Leadership Conference. So there's a day behind us, a day and a half behind us. But just like me, you're talking to a bunch of people here. So what are the hot topics that you're having as discussion besides the one we're doing right now? But
yeah, I think there's a lot of
because most
hot
people don't
topics.
think of you as a tech leader, by the way.
No, they
The
don't.
ones that know you will.
Yeah, no,
Okay,
they don't.
so what are the topics?
Yeah, I think, there's a few topics. I mean, obviously the state of play right now in the restaurant space in terms of consumer confidence and what's going on in traffic, and a lot of folks talking about what you're doing to help kind of ride the storm, so to speak, until we kind of see the economy and see things settle out. So let's call it that. So there's a lot of discussion around that. I think there's a lot of discussion around, obviously costs, right? What's going on with supply markets and tariffs and things like that. And again, that's got people on edge and really trying to understand what's the future hold in terms of the restaurant space where we all work on slim margins, right? And so being able to manage that from a technology perspective, from a partnership perspective. And then, from a pure technology perspective, obviously there's a lot of people talking about, so what are you doing in AI? What are you doing with the next generation of technology? What are you guys testing or piloting? Who's out there that's doing it well? Who's out there that's not? And so lots of, when I talk to my fellow CEOs and other CIOs that I know here, it's, tell me what always ask the question, what are you working on that's cool? Right? What's the cool new thing that you're working on that you're not ready for prime time?
And that answer is?
It varies.
Is there a trend in whatever that answer is?
Yeah, the trend is there's lots of people experimenting with AI. I mean, not.
But they really shouldn't be thinking about it. It should just be embedded in what they're doing.
It should be.
But it's the conversation,
but it's
right?
not yet.
But what's interesting about a conference like this, and almost every conference, restaurant finance, whatever the conferences are, is that, I don't know, that marketplace, what percentage of the companies that are here exhibiting or sponsoring are tech companies?
Oh, it's 95%.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
right.
And that's really what it is. But if you look at it as straight tech companies, that's an interesting answer. If you look at it that they're the tech behind the operations because of the labor and everything else,
That's right.
it's sort of a different way of looking at it. But it's interesting how that sort of creeps up and who's doing the types of technologies and the types of people what you come here to hear, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, let's break it down. The two most important partners that any restaurant chain has right now are your food suppliers and your technology suppliers. That hands down. And on any given day, one might actually be higher than the other.
and they got to integrate with each other.
And they have to integrate, right? And they support each other. But there's no way to operate successfully and efficiently a restaurant chain from 1 unit to 1,000 units without technology in the right place, doing the right thing.
But hopefully behind the scenes, over
sure.
time we should just sort of forget that it's even out there. It's sort of,
That's the best kind.
I took an autonomous vehicle here from the airport, and you know what? It takes you, after they pull out and they do whatever it is they're doing, you forget actually that there's no driver there.
Right.
And I think that's probably, what it's going to be. So just sort of as a parting thought, on this, is there some takeaway that you are going to take away from this conference or a trend since the beginning of the year that you really think, is going to be your focus you're bringing back to your team?
Yeah, I think for us, it's our big focus for across all our brands is accelerating our innovation. And when I say that, it's not just menu innovation, operational innovation, but how do we do things differently faster? And that's where I think technology can play a bigger role, at least in our environment. Some of the bigger guys may already be farther along than we are, but what I'm hearing from kind of the capabilities of the next generation of technologies is really allowing us to accelerate innovation. How do we get new items out faster? How do we get new processes out faster? How do we engage customers and team members faster with newer, better things?
But it is easier to do, and you can do that, right?
It's so much
the enabling
easier.
piece is there.
Exactly.
So you really can do that. Well, look, I know this is like we see each other at the different events, and we see each other at different things, and it's great having the conversation. I think it's interesting to have somebody in a executive leadership role in a company with so many different brands in there and challenges, but also bringing that history with you that comes from some really high level of service and hospitality brands in there. So I think that it's a different kind of perspective. So I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having
today. And it'll be fun to sort of see, since I didn't ask you directly, what that next piece is, that if somebody's asking you and you're not sitting with me, what that answer is going to be. So Sherif, thank you for joining us today. And
thank you.
Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you.
This podcast is brought to you by the International Food and Beverage Technology Association. The IFBTA is the industry's voice of food service, hospitality, and retail technology, providing thought leadership as your single, impartial, and go-to resource. The IFBTA offers in-person and online communities to connect with your peers, the exchange, an all-encompassing global technology resource, and an industry-wide professional education and certification program. The bottom line is the IFBTA is your place to gather, learn, and share in conversations like the one we're having today. Thank you for joining us on this episode of TechBytes, powered by the IFBTA. I'm Rob Grimes, your host, and I look forward to taking our next bite of technology together.